In this video, I'm going to show you 7 fun and powerful builds you can use in Elden Ring on any given playthrough. In this video, you're going to see new game plus 6 and 7 gameplay, so strap up because some of these builds are actually super dope. So first up, we need to look at a build that I have just kind of stumbled upon and was doing some experimenting with, and I actually really enjoy it. Everyone here at this point knows that I'm a sucker for a strength build, but this is going to be a little bit of strength and faith with the Anvil Hammer. This has a lot of different attributes you need in order to wield it. However, it's going to scale mainly with strength and a tiny bit of faith, giving some fire damage and awesome physical. Everything is better in this game with a massive colossal weapon, and the Anvil Hammer is just that. We're going to be equipping the Rakshasa armor set in order to get some more damage, and we are going to be using things like the Shard of Alexander to boost that Ash of War smithing art spears. I really like this weapon. It's fantastic with heavy charged R2s if you want to go that way. However, there are multiple ways to play this weapon, so you will never get bored if this is the one you choose to use. Everything we have equipped is going to give us more damage or add to the quality of life of our build. We do have a level 150 build here, and we are going to be using things like Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow just to boost our damage and damage negation that much higher. But this is an incredibly solid beginner or veteran friendly build that I think you'll definitely have a blast with. Oh, and in case you're curious about the Elden Beast fight, don't worry, I died to some complete and utter BS and we're not going to talk about it. So for our Anvil Hammer build, we're going to be rocking the Anvil Hammer as well as whatever seal you want for the buffs. I'm using the Rakshasa armor for the extra 8% damage. I'm using the Shard of Alexander, the Great Jar's Arsenal, the two-handed sword talisman, and the two-headed turtle talisman for the extra stamina. Now for our flask, I'm using the Flame Shrouding cracked here as well as the Blood Sucking cracked here. You don't do a ton of fire damage with this weapon, so you can swap that out for a stance break tier or a damage negation tier or whatever else you would like. And when it comes to the stats and buffs, we are using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow. This is a level 150 build on New Game plus 5. Vigor is 55, Mind is 18, Endurance is 24, Strength is 75, Dexterity is 10, 11 Intelligence, 25 Faith, and 11 Arcane. Next up, we're going to look at a build with the Curseblade Cirque. Now, I absolutely love this weapon. Not only is Deadly Dance a really fun Ash of War to use, but this weapon is a fantastic scaling dex weapon with a dexterity scaling in B. Now, we're using a ton of multi-hit talismans as well as the Shard of Alexander for that Deadly Dance. However, one thing we are doing with this that's going to make it just that much more fun to use is we are using the Deflecting Hard tier. The guard counter with the Curseblade Cirque hits 4 times if you get that guard counter off. So with the Deflecting Hard tier and the Curved Sword Talisman, your guard counters are going to hit like an absolute truck. This is a really fun and powerful build to use. If you are a dex user and are tired of using katanas, this is definitely the build you want to try out. We are also going to get innate blood loss on this weapon, so it is nice when it happens. However, I found that the majority of things that I was fighting died way before that blood loss was even procced, so we're not using things like the White Mask just for that reason. Now, the only thing you need to watch out for this build is the fact that you can get knocked out of your 4-part guard counter, so you really have to time that window correctly. However, if you get all 4 of those hits off with the guard counter, your enemy's health bar is going to deplete so quickly it actually becomes quite comical. Now, when it comes to how this build is put together, we're going to be using the Curseblade Cirque at plus 9. If I had another stone, I would make it plus 10, but we're also using the Commander's Standard just for the buff to get some extra damage and damage negation that's going to stack with the buff we're going to talk about at the end of this particular build. Now, I am using Rakshasa's armor set. It is worthy to note, though, that if you have the Dancer's set, you are going to get your damage boosted by 10%, but I wanted the extra armor and over the 51 poise, which is why I have the Rakshasa set here. Now, we have our Curved Sword Talisman for those enhanced guard counters, extra guard counter damage. We have the Shard of Alexander and both Millicent's Prosthesis and Rotten Wing Sword Insignia for our successive attacks. Now, when it comes to our Flask of Wondrous Physic, we are using the Deflecting Hard tier, which is going to stack beautifully with the Curved Sword Talisman, and we also have the Green Burst Crystal tier just for that extra stamina recovery speed. Now, when it comes to our buff, we are using Flame Grant Me Strength as well, which is going to stack with Commander's Standard, and for our build, we have a level 170 build on New Game plus 6. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 33 Endurance, 24 Strength, 85 Dexterity. It's only going to be 80 dexterity without Millicent's prosthesis, 9 intelligence, 15 faith for flame grant me strength, and 8 arcane. Now in our third slot for our third build of the video, we are going to be looking at the Perfumer. Now I wanted this build to be so good, and if you go up against an enemy that takes more fire damage, this build is going to absolutely shred. We're using a charged heavy R2 build with the Fire Spark Perfume bottle and Wall of Sparks as the Ash of War. Now this is definitely more of the fun side of builds rather than incredibly overpowered. I personally wanted to try the perfume bottles for so long, and after the nerf I really hadn't touched them, but I wanted to go back and try one out for myself. So I think the Fire Spark Perfume bottle is decent and scales really well with dexterity, so it's also great if you want to have another dex weapon in your hand in case you get in a situation where you need to pour out a ton of damage rather than just a normal amount. However, the running light attack as well as the running heavy attack and then also Wall of Sparks and the heavy charged R2 of this weapon can be very fun to use. We're boosting as much of our damage with this entire setup as we possibly can, but if we are being honest just between us, you're probably better off never using a perfume bottle in this game. Now don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place for them, and like I've said, they can be a lot of fun, especially if you want to play the game with a little bit more challenge, but it just seems like FromSoft wasn't 100% sure what to do after they found out that Rolling Sparks was beyond too powerful and nerfed it. It just seems like this is a weapon that doesn't get talked about anymore. So for our Perfumer build, we're going to be using the Fire Spark Perfume bottle with the Wall of Sparks Ash of War. We're also going to be using the Commander's Standard for the Rallying Standard buff, and we're also going to be using Flame Grant Me Strength, which is why I have the Finger Seal equipped. Now, you can use whatever armor you would like. I wanted to use a more hefty armor to get over the 51 poise mark because you will be trading damage most likely with this build. Now, I have the Shard of Alexander, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman for more damage negation, the Axe Talisman because I like to use this build with heavy charged R2s, and the Perfumer Talisman. Now for our flask, we're using the Spike Cracked here for the heavy charged R2s as well as the Flame Shrouding Cracked here for more fire damage. And when it comes to our stats, we are level 170, New Game +6, Vigor 60, Mind 20, Endurance 33, Strength 24, Dexterity is 80, Intelligence 9, Faith is at 15 for Flame Grant Me Strength, and Arcane is at 8. Now the next build we're going to be looking at is one that I wanted to surround the Multilayered Rings of Light. I always thought that this incantation was incredibly fun to use, and I feel I finally put together a build that does the incantation justice. This is a really awesome build to use against enemies and bosses that are bigger, as the Multi-Rings of Light will spin in one spot, and the bigger the enemy is, it seems to do a ton more damage a lot more quickly than if you were to do it to a smaller enemy. The key with this build is to not get hit, as we are going to be using things like the Ritual Sword Talisman in order to get that 10% extra attack power boost. But if things do get hairy and you get in a situation where you can't use your incantations and things are too close, you can use the Winged Scythe, as the Angel's Wings Ash of War is incredibly fun to use, does a lot of damage, and will give you some time to run away and cast the Multilayered Rings of Light once again, or Discus of Light if you choose. We are going to be boosting every single bit of damage we possibly can with this build, using things like the Black Dumpling, the Holy Scorpion Charm, as well as Howl of Shabriri in the build, which we'll go over in just a minute. But this build is going to be a lot of fun for you to use if you want to use a hybrid caster faith build that can pack a punch. So for this build, you're going to be using the Winged Scythe at +9. I have the Dryleaf Seal at +25. We're going to be using the Black Dumpling, the Rakshasa armor set for all that extra damage, and the Black Dumpling obviously for when we proc Howl of Shabriri. We're going to then use the Ritual Sword, the Godfrey Icon, the Sacred Scorpion Charm, and the Phlox Canvas Talisman. For your flask, you're going to use the Holy Shroud and Crack tier and the Intelligence Knot Crystal tier. And when it comes to your buffs and stats, we're going to be a 170 build on New Game +6. Vigor is 60, Mind is 27, Endurance is 25, Strength is 20, Dexterity is 20, Intelligence is 9, and Faith is 80 with Arcane at 8. We're using Golden Vow, Howl of Shabriri for the extra buffs, and then we're using Multi-Layered Rings of Light, as well as Discus of Light, in order to have some really fun spells that are incredibly powerful. For our next build, technically we have a Rune Bear type cosplay or a Red Bear cosplay. We're going to be using the Red Bear's Claws, which is an absolutely phenomenal strength weapon, and it's going to give you a crazy amount of physical damage with some blood loss buildup. Now, the Red Bear Hunt Ash of War hits multiple times, does a huge chunk of damage off the enemy's health bar, and with the talismans and gear we have equipped for this build, you are going to be tanky and do a lot of damage, which is what we want all these builds to do. We are once again going to be using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow to boost all kinds of damage and damage negation for us, and if you are on normal game and not New Game Plus, this is going to be a build that you can use. Now, as I stated before, all these builds are New Game Plus 5 and 6, but I wanted to make sure that people understand that they can put these builds together on their first playthrough if that's what they decide to do. Now, in my personal opinion, the quality of life of this build is just fun to play. Yes, it is powerful, but as you go through Elden Ring, this build is going to be a very easy build for you to pick up, and whether you're a veteran or new player, this build is going to be a lot of fun because you don't really have to do anything except Ash of War spam if that's what you decide to do. Also, I've been playing a lot of First Berserker Kazan recently, so my controls are all messed up and I feel like I'm getting the rust off while playing Elden Ring again, and I absolutely could not believe this was happening to me as I was filming this video. But for this build, we're going to be using the Red Bear's Claw. We're also using the Pelt of Ravla for the RP, and then I have the Rakshasa armor set as it matches perfectly, not only for extra damage but also for our cosplay. I have the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman for extra stamina, the Retaliatory Cross Tree Talisman for attacks after we roll. I have the Rottenwing Sword Insignia and the Shard of Alexander. For my flask, I have the Blood-Sucking Crack tier for extra damage and the Opaline Hard tier for some extra damage negation. And when it comes to our stats and buffs, this is level 150 build on New Game Plus 6, Vigor 55, Mind 18, Endurance 24, Strength is 75, Dexterity is 10, Intelligence 11, Faith is 25, and Arcane is at 11. Once again, our buffs are Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow, and that's going to be it for this build. Now, this next build is just your basic, as easy as it gets, strength build. Get a massive stick in your hand and just hit your enemies with it. However, this stick is going to do an exorbitant amount of damage. We're going to be breaking stances with ease. We are going to be doing a ton of physical damage. This weapon does have holy damage on it. However, we are not going to be taking advantage of that at all, as it's so minuscule, you'll just be wasting talisman slots on trying to boost that damage at all. What you want here is to get as much physical damage out as possible and boost your physical damage as high as you can. We are going to be using a great mix of talismans that allow you to spike your damage, whether you're getting critical attacks or whether you are able to just do heavy charged R2s on your enemy. Either way, I am constantly impressed with how much damage we can pull out of the Great Club. This is one of my all-time favorite weapons and has been throughout the entire Dark Souls series into Elden Ring, and I really feel like they did this weapon justice, especially in one of the most recent patches where they buffed it to make it just that much better. Now, as you can see, the majority of the bosses that I'm fighting are dead in about 3 to 4 hits, which just proves how great and fun this build can actually be. Now, for this build, we're using the OG Bonk Stick, the Great Club. This has excellent scaling and strength, also going to give you a lot of physical damage and surprisingly some holy damage, but we're not going to be taking advantage of that at all. For your armor, you can use whatever you would like. If you want more damage, use the Rakshasa set. I'm just using this because I think it looks pretty cool. I'm using the Blade of Mercy, the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, the Axe Talisman, as well as the Crusade Insignia. For my flask, I'm using the Blood-Sucking Crack tier and the Spike Crack tier. And when it comes to my stats and buffs, I'm using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow. This is a level 150 build on New Game Plus 6. Vigor is 55, Mind is 18, Endurance is 24, Strength is 75, Dexterity is 10, Intelligence is 11, Faith at 25, and Arcane is at 11. Now for the next build, we are using the Bloodhound's Fang. Now this is one of the most face roll talentless weapons you can use in Elden Ring because of its Ash of War Bloodhound's Finesse. We have a 2-part Ash of War that gives you free iframes so you can dodge right through attacks in order to get to your enemy, as you're going to see in this boss fight. But this build is one that I really have stayed away from only because I feel like everybody has a Bloodhound's Fang build, and I believe this is my first, maybe second Bloodhound's Fang build that I've ever done on this channel. We are going to concentrate on a lot of quality of life talismans rather than stacking a ton of damage, because I I found that Bloodhound's Finesse is going to just do a ton of damage regardless of what talismans you put with it. We're going to be stacking a lot of damage and damage negation via our buffs and our flask, but overall this is a great build just to use if you want a nice, smooth, and easy run through Elden Ring, yet you don't want to be crazy overpowered. As I stated, you can make this build insane if you add a ton of damage talismans, but I wanted to go with just the nice quality of life that gives players a great run in Elden Ring, yet still a little bit of a challenge. For our last build, I'm using the Bloodhound's Fang. I also have the Commander's Standard for the extra damage boost and physical damage negation. You don't have to use this, but it definitely is nice to have. I'm using whatever armor set that I thought looked cool. I have 71 poise. You can use Rakshasa here if you want more damage. I'm using the Shard of Alexander, the Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, the Great Jar's Arsenal, and the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman. For my flask, I'm using the Thorny Cracked Tear and the Blood-Sucking Cracked Tear. And when it comes to our buffs, we have Flame Grant Me Strength, which will stack with the Commander's Standard, and we also have a 170 build on New Game +7. Vigor is 60, Mind is 20, Endurance is 33, Strength is 24, Dexterity is 80, Intelligence is at 9, Faith is at 15, and Arcane is at 8. And guys, that is going to be it for our 7 fun and powerful builds that you can use on any playthrough in Elden Ring. I'm super stoked to get into some Elden Ring Night Rain content coming out here in the next few weeks, so let me know if you're going to be playing that as well. Also, let me know what builds you've been using in Elden Ring just to pass the time until we get to the next FromSoft piece of Forbidden Fruit. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching until the end of the video. Make sure to subscribe on your way out, and until next time, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.